If Jeff Bezos dies tomorrow, we're going to keep ordering from Amazon. Now, that's a silly, very large example, but the same exact thing has to occur. What do we need to do today so that our company is around in 100 years and people say, Jesse, who? I mean, that's the goal.
Welcome to all the listeners across the globe to the Top One podcast. Unfortunately, we don't have our jovial, normal leader this morning, Gary Corliss. He had some issues with some spring storms and lightning around his house, so he won't be joining us today. But man, we've got a great lineup. We got a real treat for you today, and Jesse Holman and Bill Conroy. Jesse is the co-founder and owner, and Bill is owner of HCP Companies. And so, man, we're really thankful. When we talk about top 1%, you're looking at them right now. These guys absolutely kill it, really pioneers in the industry in terms of what they've built. And we've had a lot of recent conversations around what they're doing and how they've done it, and maybe can kind of help get you there quicker. So today's episode will be what we would call a master class for those advanced in their career, already been at it a long time, but looking for what's next. But in addition to that, could be a vision for those currently in an ensemble or just looking for what could be a vision of the future. And so, I'll be quiet here and let Jesse and Bill take over for a minute. But, we've spoken about progression of a practice from solo to ensemble to an enterprise or an enterprise company or enterprise model. And that's what they're going to be talking about, is the latter, that enterprise model and what that looks like. Jesse and Bill, if you want to take a minute and introduce yourselves or just kind of tell us about where you guys currently are, and we'll take it from there.
Love to. Thanks, Chaz. I'm the old guy in the group now that Dennis has retired, obviously. The company started almost 25 years ago when Dennis and I put it together. And so when Dennis and I were really trying to do everything, we always had envisioned having this ensemble model or this company that you're referring to, and the enterprise model, really. And so unfortunately, he never got to see it because he retired too soon. But he and I started the company, and we now have 4 partners, 2 of which aren't obviously on this call. I'll let Bill introduce himself and where he came from. But so yeah, this is coming on 25 years for me doing it. So I think I've messed it up just about every way possible. And so hopefully Bill can take the reins when I'm gone and continue on.
Yeah, and so I got lucky enough to pretty much start my career as this thing was taking off. So I've been in the business 8 years and then 5 years with HCP, and I got the luxury of learning from Dennis and Jesse, and then ultimately buying out Dennis's share.
That's awesome, guys. Yeah, it's been a long road. Jesse, I think back to me and you fishing in my uncle's pond and talking about, like, man, if I could just get to that level of revenue on an ongoing basis, and here we are many years later. It's pretty cool. So talk to us about the stages of your practice, and Jesse, you may want to take this one just because you've gone from solo to ensemble to this model, or you've been a pioneer in it. Can you kind of break that down and describe each stage in your own words?
Yeah. So when you start, I think everyone can agree you really just want to survive. And so you have this survival period where maybe that's a couple years, maybe that's 5 years, but you get to the point to where you say, okay, I'm not going to fail out of the business. And so when you get to that point, then you realize, okay, now I actually have to grow and I have to stop doing things I shouldn't do. You need staff. A lot of times this is where partnerships come into play. And so very early on, I was fortunate to have a partner of about 12 years. And then shortly thereafter, that's when Dennis came on board. And so when you're doing that, trying to survive, you're doing everything. And so you want to get out of that as quick as possible. And I was fortunate in that I got out of that in about the first year. Not that I survived, but that I had staff and I had partners and I had lots of resources to help. And so after about 3 or 4 years, I realized, okay, I'm going to make it. I've got some staff, I've got some partners, but now what? Now what do we do? How do we grow it? And what you don't realize at the time is that through all of this, you're really selling yourself. And I'll tell you in a minute why that's important. So you're going along, you're selling yourself. Clients are buying into you, they're buying into your vision, they're buying into what you're able to do. And you're able to do more and more in terms of capacity because you have a partner or partners, you have staff, you've built some processes hopefully at this point. And so as you continue along, you then get to a point to where it's just 2 people. So take me and Dennis. So it was me and Dennis, and we had some staff, and we always had newer advisors who were coming in that we kept trying to survive past that point, get them into a partnership with us. And we just really never could do it. And we always joked about the tipping point. We always said there's going to be this tipping point where the dam's going to break, everything's going to bust open. And it did. But like I said earlier, unfortunately, it busted open right after he left, after he retired. He got to hear about it. He just didn't get to experience it. But I knew he was always right. And it really occurred when we brought Bill on. And so we had an experienced advisor who had been in the business for a couple years. We didn't really have to get them licensed. We didn't have to teach them how things work. And in addition to that, about the same time, within about 6 months to a year, we actually rolled up a couple other advisors, Chad and Justin, who are now partners with us, into our firm, brought their staff along and their processes. So what we really had is we had all the ingredients there of experience, and we put them all together. Once we put them all together, that's when the dam broke and the tipping point, we got past that and everything took off. Then it was just a matter of taking all of those ingredients and all of what was really chaos at the time and trying to figure out, okay, who goes where in this new model? Because what you did to get you here is not what you're going to do that's going to get you there, wherever there is. And so what we had to reframe was all of the things that we did to be successful up to that point probably weren't going to be the things to continue to allow us to be successful moving forward, because everybody had different roles, everybody had different expertise, different baggage, everything. So it's much like maybe blending a family. If you had previous marriages and then you're putting them together, that everyone had a way of doing things. And now you've got to figure out a completely new way of doing things so that it works for everybody.
No, that's great. Bill, anything you want to chime in, or maybe even talk to us functionally of how that looks, even from an org chart or roles and responsibilities, and then maybe even advisor roles? I know you guys talked about even one specific advisor that just does nothing but prospecting because that's what he loves to do. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point, because when you're running in the business as, a solopreneur, or just you and maybe one partner, it's not really a business, right? And so the process of, me joining and Dennis retiring and adding Chad and Justin and then a bunch of staff in between there, it really was about making it like a real business. And so that means you have to have a CEO, you have to have someone who's tip of the spear, right? You have to have a COO, someone managing all the operations, right? And generally be the partners, because the partners are in our business advisors who are managing client relationships. And so I think it really started with us just mapping out what a real business would look like. And so there's, the business development side, there's the planning and analysis side, and then there's the operations side. And so we've made org charts and roles and responsibilities to fill all of those different divisions, right? And so then we looked at, okay, if we're operating not like a track star anymore and we're like a basketball team or a football team, what are the roles on the team that everyone will play best, right? You need a coach, you need a point guard, you need a shooting guard, you need someone who can play defense. And so what we found is, if everyone's in the zone of excellence, so to speak, that's when they're going to operate best. And that's when 1 + 1 = 5 or 10 or some bigger number, right? We have people on our team that are focused on business development clients, right? We have people that are focused on doing the analysis. We have people that are focused on actually serving those clients and closing business and maintaining it on an ongoing basis. And then we have people that do everything in between, right? But really the goal is to get everyone to their zone of excellence, so they're doing what they love and are best at every day.
What about from a staffing perspective? What does that look like for your administrative team?
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a relay race. And so you have someone who does the onboarding and then passes the baton off to a paraplanner, who then passes the baton back to the advisor to do reviews and presentations, and then passes the baton on to the implementation team who does all the investment insurance paperwork. And then we have people that manage that on an ongoing basis, right? And so everyone is in a different role and more of a specialist in their role, even on staff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talk to us a little bit, maybe Jesse, about going from struggling, like we talked about, getting through that, then partnering with Dennis and having an ensemble, kind of getting your income where it's greater than your expenses. You can rest a little bit, and then, where you are today.
Yeah, just in terms of the progression of what that took, or
Yeah, kind of that tipping point, like just the stress. I know you've had a lot of growing pains, a lot of, man, if I could go back and redo that, that's what I'll do. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, because I know, you're really, in my opinion, a pioneer in what you're doing. But just in terms of like how you feel about where you are today, just emotionally, like going through that process. I know it's been some stressful times.
yeah, as Bill said, you really start to think about our industry and our business as a company. And so if you ask yourself, how would any company do XYZ? An Amazon, a local company, it's probably not how we do it as advisors, or how we're trained, or how we've done it in the past. And so a CEO or the president of the company or the founder typically isn't doing a lot of administrative stuff, but we still find ourselves doing that, right? Like that doesn't make sense. You hire to that. You have, as Bill said, you have everyone in their area of excellence, and that's what they do well. And the second that somebody goes from where they're supposed to be to where they shouldn't be, you typically have a breakdown, messes get created. And so, yeah, for us, this is what I had always envisioned was having a true company running that was owned by partners, that had advisors, that had staff, that had processes, that had an executive team, even going to a board of directors that's not necessarily filled with clients, but maybe filled with other industry leaders and in other industries or something. But so that Dennis and I's goal was always to have this company outlive us. And so I said earlier that the problem that we had early on in our careers is that we were selling ourselves. Once you sell yourselves, when you go away or you die or you retire, typically the client and what they bought goes away. And so a lot of our language had to change. Instead of using me or I, you had to use us, our company, our firm. And what I learned early on was there was a CPA firm that I used, and the CPA that I was using had left. And I sort of felt like this, all right, where do I go? And I got put with another accountant that was good, but not great like what I had. And I went to the two founders and I said, hey, I really need somebody that can handle the level of complexity that I'm dealing with. And they took ownership of it. They put me with somebody else. It's been fantastic. And so what I realized is that I was buying the firm and I was buying the services the firm was delivering, not the person they had in that role. And I've even had the people that were working on our financials inside of that accounting firm leave, and I've had somebody else, and it's been fine. So from that, I realized, hey, there's no reason why we can't do it. You know, if Jeff Bezos dies tomorrow, we're going to keep ordering from Amazon. Now, that's a silly, very large example, but the same exact thing has to occur. What do we need to do today so that our company is around in 100 years and people say, Jesse, who? I mean, that's the goal. We want to have it so that they're buying the company, they're getting what they need from our firm, and it outlives us.
Man, I love that. Buying the firm, thinking more legacy. That's awesome. One of you has used this analogy, and I think it came from a consulting company that you guys use, but was it using comparing a golf team versus a football team, something along those lines? Can one of you walk us through that analogy? I thought it was really good.
Yeah, that's the progression. It was a coaching program that we went through, and their analogy was we all start off as track stars. And so we're all on the track, we're all running our individual race, and I might come in first, Bill might come in third, whatever. And that's how you start. And really, when you get to the finish line, they give you your individual time. Right? They give you what was your production, what was your profit, whatever metric it was. And then from that, you realize, hey, I think I can do this better together with others. And so you typically don't have a formal partnership. You might just do joint work. You might share some staff, but there's some kind of leverage. And that typically looks like 2 or 4 buddies going out golfing together. And so even though you're still keeping your own score, you might be coaching, hey, the wind's going this way. You've got 200 yards of the pin, whatever it is, but there's something that you're working together, but you're still being measured individually. And so on the track star to the golfing buddies, you don't care what anyone else does. On the golfing, you really care what you're doing, but you're still willing to help others as you're doing it. That's not that big of a jump until you go to the jump Bill mentioned a minute ago, which is from golfing buddies to a basketball team. So if you think about that for a minute, Michael Jordan couldn't have won all of these championships without the rest of his team, without his coach, without everybody else. And so from that standpoint, you've got 5 players that are playing at one time. You got everyone else sitting on the bench. And so now you've got to have a coach. You've got to have somebody in all 5 positions. You've got to have backups to the starters. You have an assistant coach. And that's a larger thought process to get to. Now, all of a sudden, Michael Jordan can't go out and play against 5 and win. He has to have everybody. They've got to have a coach. And that's great, but that's not the enterprise model you were mentioning. The enterprise model is a football team. And you think football team, we have 11 guys out there at one time. But we don't just have offense, we have defense. So now we have 22 starters. Well, then we have a second string and typically a third string. So now we have 66. And then we've got special teams. And then we have not just one coach, but we have an assistant coach, we have an offensive coordinator, we have a defensive coordinator, we have special teams coach. Okay, now when the receiver goes for a record-breaking number of yards in a given season, he couldn't have done that unless the quarterback threw it to him. The quarterback couldn't have done it unless he had great protection from an offensive line. The offensive line couldn't have done it unless they had a great offensive coach, and so on and so forth. And when you think about that, yes, a Tom Brady or whoever else is really, really important in that entire system. But unless you have every single person doing exactly what they're best at and doing their best, it will not work. And so if your ultimate goal is the football team, then you realize you're significant, but you're extremely insignificant unless you have everybody else where they need to be and everybody doing it really, really well.
That's spot on. I think about when you were giving that example of Tom Brady, I was thinking about, like, what if you put Tom Brady as nose guard? As great of an athlete as he is, he would be terrible, right? It just wouldn't work out.
Exactly.
So getting him in the right position. So where my mind goes as a planner myself and the old eat what you kill model, can you just give us a top of the trees overview from a compensation standpoint? Because that seems like that would be a big hurdle for a lot of ensembles that are sharing expenses or office space, staff, you name it, maybe splitting some revenue. But from an income standpoint, what does that look like? What would you coach someone in that area?
Yeah. So what you have to do is you pretty much have to take that eat what you kill and go flush it down the toilet. Because what everyone tries to do and what we try to do is we try to take the eat what you kill and we try to like force it into what I'm describing. And that doesn't work. You can't do that. Again, that would be equivalent to Tom Brady saying, like, I did it all on my own. If I need to know when to block, like I did it. And that's not true. And so what you really have to do, and there's a couple of firms that have helped us with this in the past, one of them being FP Transitions, and they're just a consulting firm to advisory companies like ours, and they do a lot of M&A activity for financial advisory firms. But we stole a lot from them, which said, hey, if you're going to go to some type of enterprise model, you no longer can have this individualistic mentality. So starting with the language, like I mentioned, but then going to also all the way down to compensation. And so if you think about any company aside from ours, again, Amazon or any company, they have all this revenue that comes in, then they pay out all their expenses, and then they have this profit. And this profit is typically distributed to shareholders. Okay. So if you're going to have a similar model, you've got to have all the revenue, first of all, come into one pot. Okay, so that means no money paid to outside or side bank accounts or an individual bank account or something like that. Now, obviously, with compliance and regulations in our industry and with any broker dealers, you've got to have it flow correctly or be assigned. But at the end of the day, the money all has to end up into a company bank account. From there, the first thing that comes out has to be expenses of the company. So these are typical expenses, rent, staff, even as Bill said, if you have a CEO, a COO, like any of the roles, all of the expenses have to be paid. From there, then you're going to have some type of gross profit, I'm going to call it. And gross profit then can really be divided into two components. One of them is ultimately going to make it down to shareholder distributions, like I gave in the Amazon example, which would be owners of the company. So in our case, me, Bill, Chad, and Justin, all the partners and the owners of the company are going to have a shareholder distribution. Now, I think to every enterprise company, they can decide how much they want to go all the way down to shareholders and how much they want to have go in this middle part that is really more of a performance pool. So performance pool would be the closest thing you could have that would smell like the eat like you kill, eat what you kill, which would be, hey, who's working and doing any of the client work? Who's finding it? Who's working on it? Who's servicing it? Right. So you're going to have some subset of advisors. Again, if you're selling the entire company and that's what the clients are buying, then they fully expect to talk to multiple people inside of your company, the advisor, the staff, the planner, whoever's working on it. And so, how we have it structured is any advisors that are working on clients from start to finish have some type of share in that compensation in the performance pool. And when you look at it like that, now if I go find a client, I'm not too worried about it because I may have Bill working on it and Justin servicing it and our staff answering other questions. And I'm still getting paid both from a performance standpoint and from a shareholder standpoint. So really the goal is to own as much of the company as possible. And then if Bill says, hey, I'm younger than Jesse and I want to work for 30 more years and Jesse's going to retire in 10 more years, then Bill can work a lot harder than I can, do a lot more client work and make more money if he wants to. So you mentioned Chad earlier. Chad just loves finding clients. And so if he's going to find them, well, our firm, again, still has to work with those clients. We still have to take care of those clients. I might be the one taking care of them. Bill might be. So I think the theme that you have to realize when you go from a eat what you kill to this model is every partner and advisor, first and foremost, has to be extremely selfless. Because selfish is eat what you kill, which is fine, right? It's just you. But if you think about the priority, the pecking order really is company first, then clients, then staff, than the advisors and partners. And so any decision you make has to be around something great for the company. It can't benefit just Jesse. It can benefit me indirectly, meaning it benefits the company and then it trickles down to me. But we can't make a decision that benefits me and not the company and everyone else first.
The order that you mentioned, it seems to be the reverse of the way.
Well, it is, right? I mean, eat what you kill. It has to be me first, and then my staff, and then my clients. I used to tell clients when we started charging financial planning fees 15 years ago, the thing you're going to love about us is also the thing you're going to hate about us, which is you're going to love paying us a fee because you're going to love a fee for service model. But you're also going to hate that because you've never done it before. It's going to feel foreign. This is the same exact thing. You're going to love this model, but you're also going to hate it. And what it is you're going to hate getting there. But once you're there, you're going to love it. And I think there's some major detractors from doing this. So let's just say I'm an eat what you kill model and I make plenty of money. What we're talking about going to is a lot of work and a lot of change. If I make enough money and I'm really satisfied and I don't really care, I'm not going to change, which is okay. But you just have to have people who have the incentive, because going to this model, and Bill and Chad and Justin can attest to this, usually means making less money initially. It did for me, because putting it all together meant now you have to share everything. But by giving up some of the money, what you're getting is this massive peace of mind, this awesome contribution to an amazing future of what's going to happen. Because if I just kept going by myself and I was going to build this all by myself, and I was going to have this ginormous solo practice or even a partnership with one other person, it was going to get so big that nobody was going to be able to write a check and buy it, right? The person that wants to buy it can't afford it, newer advisors. And the person that can buy it, experienced advisors, they don't want to buy it. They don't want that headache. They already have it. And so this is really the only way to create a built-in transition plan, some type of succession plan. It's built in internally already, so that as I'm retiring and I'm being bought out as I get closer to my end, it's just like you take the last step of a marathon. It doesn't feel like 26 miles. It's just the last step and then you're done.
Yeah, and I would say that you're guaranteeing someone's gonna buy you out, and also you're guaranteeing the value is gonna be much higher than what you'd be bought out just yourself.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with our valuations. We're at about year 7 of our projections right now, and so, like, 2 years into it. So, just doing this and making the changes and adjustments from kinda solo to this has significantly increased our valuation.
Just seems like that transition from a client perspective would be so much better too. Much more seamless. Love the company above self, giving up some revenue in the beginning, but to y'all's point earlier, based on what you said, that's probably the case until you hit that tipping point. When you call it the tipping point, what does that mean?
Yeah. If you were to take a collection of all the frustrations you've had in your entire career and you just made them go away, that's the tipping point. And so a lot of them are capacity. I've got too many clients. Hey, I don't have enough staff. Hey, I want to implement this way of doing things. I want to create a marketing calendar. I want to hire a COO. Like all of those things, I think you could ask any successful solo advisor or partnership advisor and say, hey, would you write a check for a large number to make all that go away? I did this yesterday. I asked somebody and they said, yeah, we would write a check tomorrow to make all that go away. An annoyance is something you can write a check and it goes away. A problem is something that sits there. So if it's just an annoyance, I mean, write a check, make it go away, give up the revenue to get the time and get the margin, right? As you get older, you start realizing, hey, I want more of my time. Well, can't go make any more of that. So throw the money at it. And really and truly, I think what's been so great is I wish I had walked into a model like this. And actually, I wish that I was somebody else on the outside and I could come into what we've built and just plug into that, either as a newer advisor, like my brother that's coming on board, or even an advisory firm that we're looking to buy or roll up under us. If all of that was built for me and I just got to unplug from my current situation and plug into what these guys have built, it would be phenomenal. I wouldn't want to go start over and recreate it all.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
And we talk about balance in life, right? If you're solo, you're responsible for everything. If you're in this model, You're not. And so you can go on vacation and someone else is handling your clients and answering emails and handling issues, and you can spend time with family, right? Like I remember Dennis saying he was like 65 at the time, and this was like right when I was coming on board. And he said, "This is the first vacation I've taken and not had to answer my phone call or email or anything like that." And so I think the freedom in that is huge. And I think for younger advisors coming into it, that is something that almost every experienced advisor has said, man, that's a downside of this business, right?
Yeah.
And so if we can help with that, what's the domino effect of that? I think it's huge.
It's awesome. Jesse, you just said, I wish. So my last question is, it and this is for both of you, if you could, like we said, you're pioneers, you're trailblazers, if you could go back, what would you do differently, or what advice would you have given yourself other than to do it faster, I'm sure?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, a lot of what we developed came as the industry and our broker-dealer and everything else sort of came about, right? I mean, we didn't have when the day that I started, there was not a whole lot of concept around charging a financial planning fee, right? That didn't exist. And so I'm not quite sure that I would have said, hey, I would have done it then because it may or may not have worked.
Sure.
I wish I could be starting right now in the industry. Okay. I guess I would say that instead of going back, I'd like to come forward. I'd like to be Bill. I'd like to be my brother. I'd like to be everyone who's starting now, because then I think I could take who I was back at 22 and get this thing even further along. So I'm not sure I would have changed anything, but I think the question you're also asking is, hey, knowing what I know now, one thing that I did do is I let a lot of people waste my time. And so a lot of people think that we're in the business of doing something other than sorting. And what I mean by sorting is if you have a bucket of rocks, okay, and you have blue rocks and you have white rocks, and you're only looking for rocks. Well, when you get to a white rock and you look at it, you have to set it to the side. And the faster you can get through that bucket, getting your blue rocks out, the better off you're going to be. But what typically happens as advisors is we pull out a white rock and we sit there and we look at it and we think about it and we talk to it and try and make it become a blue rock. Meaning we get clients that don't fit our model and we sit there and try and convince them of that. And we do that for only one reason: not enough resources. And one of the things somebody taught me real early on was take the money out of the equation. So if you're asking a question, any question about your business, should I take on this client? Should I implement this process? Whatever. And you're struggling with it, say this first: if I had $100 million in the bank, what would I decide? And usually the decision is like instantaneous. It's like, oh, I would do this. And then you realize that what's holding you back is you don't have enough money. You don't have enough resources. So get the money as quick as possible. Build up the practice as quick as you can, because then when you come to a white rock and it's not blue, you will throw it to the side as quick as possible. And the people that are most successful in this business are master sorters. They sort quicker than anyone else. They get to the blue rock they need. It's exactly what fits great. And they put it in their other basket and they start filling it up with blue rocks. And so at the end of the day, I wish I would have sorted quicker. So I just thought I could convince somebody of it. So I would stop convincing and sort. I would take the money out of the equation and just go, no plan B, burn the ships, right? And really just, I think confidence has held a lot of people back. It held me back some, not a ton, but just confidence in your ability to tell a client no. No is where everything starts. Yes is the kiss of death. As soon as you get a yes immediately or whatever, it's the kiss of death. You've got to have a no because nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to talk about what we're talking about. So the quicker you can get the no, the quicker you can get it out. You can find out why, you can talk through it. A yes will be natural. So just get to the no really quickly. Those would be the things that I would go back and do.
Bill, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, I think the one thing as I think back, and of course my career is not as long as Jesse, so I won't have all the nuggets he has. But as I think back, you take somebody who's 65 and why are they retiring? They're retiring because they financially can, or they're tired, and or they have other priorities right at that point. But what do they still have, right? They still have immense wisdom and knowledge, right? They have 30, 40 years of doing this business, right? They have connections to people that way better than they had 10, 20 years before that. And so I would say for a younger advisor or a less experienced advisor, you want to find those people with experience and just make sure you spend as much time as you can getting that wisdom and making those connections, because that's much better than what you can do on your own, or even for the first 10, 15 years of your career. And then I'd say I would think about how you envision how you want it to be and then get there as fast as possible. Because I think like when I was getting to the business, people just said, oh, you just have to sell insurance first. And then, once you sell insurance enough, then you can get your investment license. And then you can charge financial planning fees year 3. And then you can hire staff or whatever year 5 or whatever it is. And I just felt like, why are we doing these those aren't the right progressions to be making, right? And so if we envision how we want it to be and then get there as fast as possible, which I believe is via a team, because they already have the resources, they already have the experience, they already have the clients to work with. They have all the ingredients that you need to be successful. So that's what I would say as a recommendation.
And that's awesome. You guys did not disappoint. This is really good stuff. One of the other things, I wish we had more time. We're probably going to have Jesse and Bill back to talk about this enterprise model and leading to practice acquisition. And I've heard them talk a good bit about how much easier that is in this model. And so maybe that's another topic for another day. But man, I can't thank y'all enough for taking the time. Guys, listeners out there, think about the tipping point. What does that vision look like for you running what Jesse and Bill both called a real business? And that's the truth, right? And that's a big thing. And then legacy. It's more than just about ourselves. You got to take self out and think about the company. Man, it's all next level stuff and love it. Thank y'all so much for taking the time. And until next time, listeners, hopefully we'll have Mr. Corliss back with us. We'll see y'all later. Thanks a lot.